Welcome to the Season 3 compilation of the Questlore series, where I complete 24 more quests, ending with Underground Pass and Legends Quest. Sheep Herder. Councillor Halgrive tells you that a plague has spread across West Ardoyne, and whilst efforts to contain it have been successful for the most part, some sheep have become infected, and no one wants to risk catching the plague by disposing of them. You offer to help, and he hands you poisoned sheep feed. Dr. Auburn sells you his protective gear for 100 coins, and you find a cattle prod in the barn. Prodding all 4 coloured sheep into the pen, you feed them the poisoned food and incinerate their bones. Councillor Halgrive rewards you with 3,100 coins for your help. Completing this quest is a requirement for Morning's End Part 1. Observatory Quest. The observatory professor's telescope was damaged by a group of goblins, and he'd like your help to fix it. First you hand him some planks, then a bronze bar, and some molten glass. The goblins stole the lens mould, so you search for it in their dungeon. Finding a goblin kitchen key in a chest, you prod the guard awake, and then in the kitchen you find the lens mould being used as a stove to cook goblin food. You empty it and take the lens mould with you. Back at the observatory, you are handed the molten glass back, which you make a lens with. Then through the dungeon on the other side, you make it to the telescope. Looking through it, you see a constellation which the professor rewards you for correctly identifying. After completing this quest, the assistant tells you his and the professor's real names, which are Patrick and Mambo Dunaruna. Watchtower. The Watchtower wizard tells you that the 4 crystals that create a spell that protects Yanil from ogres have been stolen. Searching a bush outside the tower, you find some fingernails which belong to scavids, who are known to serve the ogres. To enter the ogre city of Gutanoth, you need to prove that you are a friend to the ogres. Speaking with Og, you learn that his nemesis Tobin has stolen a bar of gold from him. He hands you a key for the chest where it's placed. Nearby, another ogre called Gru has an enemy named Gorad and would like you to knock out one of his teeth to teach him a lesson. Whilst here you pick up some jangaberries. Along the southern edge of Gutanoth, you find a hole which leads to an island. Here you kill Gorad to get one of his teeth, and then speak with Tobin, who wants some dragon bones, which he exchanges for a piece of an ogre relic. And here in the chest you find Og's stolen gold, which you return to him for another piece of the relic. The tooth is given to Gru, who hands you the yellow crystal and the final piece for the ogre relic, which you bring to the Watchtower wizard, who magically assembles the relic together. When entering the city, you give the relic, and you're welcomed as a friend. So then you steal a rock cake, which you give to one of the guards, who will now let you cross a bridge. At another bridge, the guard will only let you jump across for 20 coins. Here you meet a high-level city guard, who speaks a riddle, the answer of which being a death rune. He hands you a scavid map for solving it. You meet a scared scavid who teaches you some basics of their language, which you use to speak with 4 others hiding in caves around the city. The final one gives you a magenta crystal, and you pick up 2 cave nightshades. You use one of the nightshades on an enclave guard to distract him, and entering, you witness ogre shamans, who are too strong to be harmed at this moment. Back at the Watchtower, the wizard tells you a recipe for a potion to kill the ogre shamans. You mix a vial of water with a guam leaf, jangaberries, and some ground bat bones, and hand this to the wizard, who turns it into a magic ogre potion. You distract the cave guards once again, and use the magic ogre potion on each of the 6 ogre shamans, the last of which drops a cyan crystal. And now you mine the final grey crystal in the centre. You talk to the Watchtower wizard, who asks you to fix the machine. You place the 4 crystals and pull the lever, activating the magic spell that returns protection to Yanil once again. A reward for this quest is a scroll that teaches the Watchtower teleport. Completing this quest is a requirement for Monkey Madness 2. Dwarf Cannon. Captain Logoff has a dilemma with goblin forces approaching from the south. He asks you to join the elite of the dwarven military called the Black Guard, tasking you with fixing 6 of the broken rails. Then he wants you to investigate the Watchtower just south of the gate to get an update from Gilub, but you only find his remains, which you return to the captain. Logoff now asks you to find Gilub's son Lolk, who has most likely been kidnapped by the goblins. East of the fishing guild, you find the goblin outpost, and within some crates in the northwestern corner, you find and free Lolk. Now Captain Logoff asks you to fix his broken multi-cannon, and then finally asks you to speak with Nolodian, who gives you an ammo mold and some instructions. These are given to Captain Logoff and he rewards you for your efforts. Completing this quest is a requirement for Between a Rock. Elemental Workshop 1. In a building southwest of the Sears Village Bank, you search a bookcase and find a book titled The Elemental Shield. The book speaks about an ore capable of concentrating elemental energy into itself. A long time ago, a workshop was created to invent new devices using this unique ore, but unfortunately, upon realizing its destructive potential, the workshop was closed down and all details of the processes involved were destroyed. Slashing the book, you find a key. In the building just north, you unlock an odd-looking wall, and downstairs, you defeat an earth elemental picking up its elemental ore. Then you turn some water wheels and pull the lever to activate the water flow. Next, you find some leather, fix the bellows and activate the airflow. And finally, you find a stone bowl, filling it with lava from the trowel, reigniting the furnace, where you smelt the elemental ore with 4 coal to obtain an elemental bar. This is used on the workbench to make an elemental shield. Completing this quest is a requirement for Elemental Workshop 2. To start this quest, you must have completed Elemental Workshop 1. Searching the bookcase in the exam center, you find a beaten book with a scroll in it. This book is a continuation of the Elemental Shield. Here it details how a metallurgist called Vitruvius tested the elemental ore, refining it to the highest quality through a process called priming. One day an experiment went wrong and a student accidentally instilled his entire consciousness into the primed ingot, and attempts to return his consciousness to his body were regrettably unsuccessful. After reading the scroll found in the book, you can search the machinery in the water room, finding a key to open a lower floor on the Elemental Workshop. Before going down, you make 2 elemental bars. Finding a crate with schematics, you fix the old crane by forging a new claw out of one of the elemental bars. Then you search the downstairs crates for 3 different sized cogs and a piece of pipe. This piece fixes the broken pipe and 3 cogs are placed onto the wind tunnel's pins. Now you operate the machinery by placing the elemental bar on the jig cart, then using the crane to dip the metal in lava. Once heated, the jig is moved onto the next station where it is flattened by a steam press. Move along once again, it is operated into a water tank, and then finally into an air tunnel. The elemental bar has now become a primed bar. Going down one more level, you find a room with a machine where you place the primed bar under an extractor gun and then operate the extractor hat, turning it into a primed mined bar. Back upstairs, you smith a mined helmet, and if you want you can also make a mined shield. The Giant Dwarf. You begin by speaking with the Dwarven boatman inside the dungeon east of Relica. You're taken to Keldagrim, which used to be run by a monarchy, although over time the rule slowly passed into the hands of the trading consortium. On the way to Keldagrim, the boat crashes into the statue of King Alvis, breaking it into millions of pieces. Commander Veldeban asks for your assistance in building a new statue. Blassadar, the sculptor, asks you to get him clothes, an axe and boots fit for a king. Vermundi says she can make the clothes but firstly needs a reference. You speak with a librarian who says you can search the shelves. Finding the book on costumes, you reignite the steam-powered spinning machine and pay 200 coins to get the exquisite clothes. You ask Saro about the boots, but he sold them to Dromund, who refuses to give them to you. You grab one from a table while he's on the other side of the room, and the other by telekinetically grabbing it from outside his house. Sentiri, the sword shop tradesman, has the original axe of King Alvis, which has been passed down his family over hundreds of years, but time has severely rusted and damaged it. You add 3 sapphires to the hilt, and then speak with Thurgo, who in exchange for a red berry pie and an iron bar restores the axe to its former glory. You give Ricky, the model for the statue, the exquisite clothes, boots and axe, and Blassadar asks you to help the directors of the consortium to decide which head to put on the statue. Choosing one of the companies of the consortium, you assist their secretary by bringing various ores, eventually gaining their trust to assist the director, for whom you bring bars. Once you're established as an honorary member of the company, you speak with Commander Veldeban and tell him you will go to the consortium meeting, where you vouch for the director, deciding the head for the Giant Dwarf statue. The Red Axe Company's director leaves enraged. Completing this quest is a requirement for another slice of ham and Forgettable Tale of a Drunken Dwarf. To start this quest you must have completed Fishing Contest and the Giant Dwarf. The quest begins when Veldeban tells you that the Red Axe Company has left Keldgrim after its director showed frustration for not having been chosen as the model for the head of the Giant Dwarf statue. Veldeban suggests speaking with a drunken dwarf who's been known to sometimes rant about Red Axe. You give the drunken dwarf a beer, but he wants something stronger called Kelder Stout. He hands you a Kelder hop seed and indicates that his drinking friends may have more. Outside the Laughing Miner pub, the rowdy dwarf asks you for a random item in exchange for his Kelder hop seed. Using the minecart system, you find a pub in a tunnel underneath White Wolf Mountain, and Korvac, a dwarven engineer, gives you another Kelder hop seed. Lastly, in the King's Axe Inn, you do a toast with Gauss, and he gives you the fourth and final seed. You ask Rind, the gardener, for advice on planting these seeds, and he gives you permission to use the Kelder hops patch. This takes about 15 minutes to grow. After these have been grown and harvested, you get some ale yeast from Blandbeer for 25 coins, and in the vat you mix together 2 buckets of water, 2 barley malt, the Kelder hops and the ale yeast. This takes another 15 minutes to ferment. You turn a valve, pour the Kelder stout in a beer glass, and give this to the drunken dwarf, and he tells you about the boarded up tunnel. Speaking with the conductor, you learn that he cannot remove the boards without the right authority. You then speak to the director of your mining company, who orders the boards to be removed, and you enter a minecart to head down the new tunnel. Here you find a puzzle with square stones that direct the cart along the tracks above the chasm. Once through, you snoop in on a conversation between the Red Axe director and some accomplices, finding out that he planned for the boat to crash into the statue and that he wanted to blame it on a human. In the next room, there's a second puzzle, similar to the first one, leading to an archive room, where you find documentation of the bribing of the boatman and a plan to blame a human. You also read about the suspected intrusion of a dwarf, who then had his memory wiped by a spell that makes him obsessed with beers and kebabs, so he doesn't reveal the Red Axe operation. Lastly, you learn about the adoption of an ogre shaman to cast magic spells since dwarves are unable to use magic. Then there's a third minecart puzzle room. At the end, you see an army of chaos dwarves but are caught by an ogre and have your memories erased. You try to tell Veldeban but are unable to. Back in the Laughing Miner pub, you have a beer and a kebab and tell the story of what you saw, replacing chaos dwarves with kebabs and a Red Axe conspiracy with drunken dwarves. The Lost Tribe. To start this quest, you must have completed Goblin Diplomacy and Rune Mysteries. Sigmund wants you to investigate a hole in the castle basement. He suspects that monsters are responsible for the damage. Going around Lumbridge, one of the townspeople tells you that they saw a goblin with huge eyes in the castle basement. Reporting this to the Duke, he asks you to further investigate the hole, not being convinced it was dug by goblins. In the tunnel you find a brooch. The Duke believes it's too well crafted for goblins to have made it, so Sigmund insists that it was stolen by them and that they should attack the goblins at once. But first the Duke wants to get more proof before committing his troops to war. In the Varrock Castle library, Roldo mentions having recently seen a book about ancient goblin tribes. Inside it shows symbols that list their different warlike identities. The generals of the Goblin village mention an old legend of the Dorgeshuun tribe, who chose not to fight, which goes against their big high war god's demand, and therefore they were punished to dwell underground, not being allowed to live on the surface. The generals teach you the Goblin salute and the Goblin bow emotes. Updating the Duke with this new information, he tells you to investigate the caves to better know the enemy in case of war. At the end of the tunnel maze, you salute Mistak in the traditional Goblin way, but he is initially scared. He says that when digging the tunnels, he accidentally came upon the Lumbridge Castle basement and sealed up the hole and ran away immediately, at the fear of the surface's warlike tendencies. He pleads with you to tell the Duke that the Dorgeshuun want to make peace. Unfortunately, some of the castle's silverware was stolen, and unless returned, they will attack the goblins. Pickpocketing Sigmund, you steal a little key, opening a chest in his room and finding H.A.M robes. H.A.M is the Humans Against Monsters cult. West of the Lumbridge Castle, you go to the H.A.M hideout and find the stolen silverware in a crate near the entrance. Showing this to the Duke, he fires Sigmund, who was plotting to kill all the goblins. Calling off the war, he hands you a peace treaty to define the border between Lumbridge and the Cave Goblin realm. The Dorgeshuun leader, Urtag, meets with the Duke and they commence friendly relations and establish a trade route using the hole in the basement. Meanwhile, Sigmund snoops in on the conversation and continues his plot to destroy the goblins. Completing this quest is a requirement for Wanted and Death to the Dorgeshuun. To start this quest you must have completed the Lost Tribe. Mistag asks on behalf of the Dorgeshuun Council for you to be a tour guide for Zanik, firstly needing 2 complete sets of H.A.M robes so she can go undetected. She meets the cook, who tries to get her to complete the cook's assistant quest, then the Duke, who wants to speak with Urtag again to discuss opening Dorgeshuun to visitors for better trade. Outside, she sees the sky and the sun for the first time, and then meets Hans, who is friendly towards Zanik, and then Father Eric, who tries to convince her to follow Saradomin, although she's unconvinced considering the past of the Goblins' big high war god's tendency for violence, so she remains an atheist. Bob from Bob's Axis is racist towards Goblins. A townsperson thinks lowly of Goblins, believing they're stupid. The Lumbridge Guide offers a tour, although you're already giving one. Talking with land Goblins, she's disappointed to see that they still only care about war. And lastly, the general store offers his wares to Zanik. Zanik now shares a story from her past, where upon drinking from the tears of Guthix, a mark appeared on her forehead. Juna says that she's destined to do something great, and that when the mark glows, she is to return to Juna. Now, equipped with the H.A.M robes, you explore the H.A.M lair together. Here there is mindless indoctrination and speeches about a plan to kill all monsters. Zanik notices a hidden trapdoor because of her superior sight. Downstairs you work together to get past the guards, then snooping on the conversation in the meeting room. You can't hear it, but Zanik's superior hearing abilities reveal something about a machine, although she's unable to finish telling you before you're caught. Awakening in a jail cell, you can't see Zanik. Outside you find her dead. The mark on her forehead is glowing. You carry her, making your way through the Lumbridge Swamp Caves, and find Juna, who communes with Guthix to resurrect Zanik after you collect 20 tears. Her destiny is to lead Goblins to a new age. She now mentions what she heard from the meeting. A tunnel under the watermill has reached the Goblin Caves, and a shipment from Keldagrim has arrived. It's for a machine that will flood the Goblins with water from the River Lum. They salute to the death of the Dorgeshuun. At the watermill, Zanik hides in one of the machine part boxes to get inside the cave, and then a fight ensues. Defeating Sigmund, he's saved by his Ring of Life. You and Zanik break the machine, foiling the H.A.M plot to wash away the Goblins. After consulting with Zanik, Urtag opens up Dorgeshuun to the people of Lumbridge, and Zanik believes that you'll adventure together again in the future. Completing this quest is a requirement for another slice of H.A.M. To start this quest you must have completed Death to the Dorgeshuun, the Giant Dwarf and the Dig Site. Urtag and Ambassador Alvajar are discussing the completion time for the new train between Keldagrim and Dorgeshuun. There's been an important discovery of ancient artifacts buried during the Dorgeshuun Civil War, which can tell a lot about their history. Saying you have archaeological experience, you offer to help excavate. Tegdak hands you a trowel and specimen brush. After digging and cleaning the 6 artifacts, you hand these to him, but the symbol-covered mace is of particular interest, and he recommends that you show it to the scribe. The scribe can't decipher the symbols, and asks you to consult the Goblin Village generals. Zanik suggests talking with Oldak and using his teleportation spheres to get to the Goblin Village quicker. The generals determine that it's a holy mace that can deactivate protection prayers, and then Grubfoot says that he recently had a dream where Zanik appeared with the mace as the supreme commander of all goblins. The general gather all the goblins from the village for Zanik to address them. While speaking, they're attacked by H.A.M members. You slip around the side of the goblin buildings to avoid their line of sight. You climb the tower and defeat them, but Sigmund appears holding a knife to Zanik's throat. He reveals his plan to tie her to the train track, with her death sparking a war between Dorgeshuun and Keldagrim. The general sends 2 of their top sergeants to assist you in rescuing Zanik. In the Lumbridge Swamp Caves, the guards' attentions are drawn to the goblin sergeants, and you slip past them whilst they're preoccupied fighting. Downstairs, at the train track, you fight Sigmund, whose protection prayer is drained by the ancient mace. Defeated, he is saved by the Ring of Life once again. You cut Zanik free from the ropes tying her to the track, saving her in the final moments before the train passes. The day is saved, the train link is opened, and you get to keep the ancient mace. Completing this quest is a requirement for Land of the Goblins. To start this quest you must have completed another slice of H.A.M and fishing contest. Grubfoot wants to get into Dorgeshuun to speak with Zanik. While surface goblins aren't allowed in, you vouch for Grubfoot, so an exception is made and he follows you in. Grubfoot tells a second dream he's had about Zanik, leading all the goblin tribes to a land called Ubiusk, where they live together peacefully. Grubfoot believes that only the priests in the secret temple under the fishing guild know where this is. Oldak hands you teleportation spheres to the goblin cave under the fishing guild. Zanik is allowed in, but you are not because you're not a goblin. So you speak with the makeover mage, who tells you a recipe for a goblin potion, which is an unfinished toad flax mixed with pharmacos berries just outside the mage's house. Back in the goblin cave, you pick some black mushrooms and grind them into black dye, which you use on some goblin armor. Drinking the potion, you turn into a goblin and wear the black goblin mail. Inside, you go to Hazamagab's tribe's corner of the temple, where you find and imprison Zanik. She explains that she didn't pass the High Priest Big Head's test on the Big High War God, having expressed her anti-theistic views. You hand her a Dorgeshuun teleportation sphere and she leaves you to continue the investigation. Speaking with High Priest Big Head, you pass the test and learn that the location of Ubiusk is knowledge held only by the previous High Priests, who are currently dead. To retrieve a special white dye for the Goblin Mail, Aggie needs a white fish caught only at Hemminster with raw slimy eel as bait. To get into the crypt, you need 6 different keys held by the 6 tribes: the Zamagab, Sadagorgak, Horogofgar, Narogoshuun, Ikeleshuun, and Yergulgok. Using the keys, you enter the crypt, speaking the name of High Priest Big Head's predecessor, Snothead. He comes to life and attacks you. Once defeated, you learn the name of his predecessor and repeat the process. After fighting Snailfeet, Moschin, and Red Eyes, you finally encounter Strongbones. Each High Priest becomes more articulate and well-spoken as you progress, implying that goblins were once more educated and civilized than they are today. You learn that Ubiusk is in a different plane of existence, and goblin blood is needed to open the portal. Informing Zanik and Oldak, they think a fairy ring could be used to enter Ubiusk. You adjust the machine next to the fungi circle, calibrating each ring, and a portal is opened to a land unlike the one Grubfoot described. Ubiusk appears to be an empty wasteland. In the center, you find a strange box. When opened, Zanik is sucked into it. Oldak says that the portal is about to close. Zanik has disappeared. I'll find you, Zanik. Priest in Peril. King Rold has lost contact with Drezel in Patadomus and would like you to check on him. Behind the doors of the temple, you hear some voices asking you to kill the dog under the mausoleum. The king is furious, as this dog was the guardian of the only passage between Mauritania and Misfalin. Back at the temple, you kill a monk of Zamorak to receive a key. Upstairs you find Drezel imprisoned. He explains how vampires took over Mauritania, and 7 priestly warriors fought for 10 days and nights straight to protect Misfalin, blessing the river with protection, preventing the vampires from being able to cross. Drezel is a descendant of one of the 7 priestly warriors and can't get past the coffin without waking the vampire with the smell of his blood. In the temple, you fill a bucket with water from the well and replace the key in one of the knight's statues. You unlock Drezel's cell and he blesses the water in the bucket, which you pour in the coffin. Then you meet under the mausoleum and he explains that without the guardian, Zamorak worshippers were able to use an evil potion to pollute the river Salve. Rune essence may be able to soak up the evil magic released in the river. You bring 50 of these to Drezel and the protection is restored. He rewards you with a Wolfbane dagger, which prevents werewolves from adopting their human form, and you can now access Mauritania. Completing this quest is a requirement for Animal Magnetism, Creature of Fenken Strain, Desert Treasure 1, Ghost Ahoy, Haunted Mine, Making History, Nature Spirit, Rumdil, Shades of Morton, and Wanted, Recruitment Drive. To start this quest, you must have completed Black Knight's Fortress and Druidic Ritual. Ceramic Vase has put your name forward for testing by certification to join the Temple Knights after seeing how useful you were during the Black Knight's Fortress quest. You're put through a series of challenges including riddles, spotting the odd one out, puzzles, an escape room, and combat with a knight immune to damage from men, requiring your gender to be female to defeat him. Once you've completed the 5 rooms, you've passed the test and can now equip the Initiate Armor. Completing this quest is a requirement for Wanted. To start this quest, you must have completed Recruitment Drive, The Lost Tribe, and Priest in Peril. Certification would like to expedite your process in joining the Templar Knights by exploiting a loophole. Basically, you tell Ceramic Vase that you want to be a White Knight instead of a Templar Knight, and when offered a role as a squire, you refuse so that you can become a deputy instead. If you complete an impressive feat whilst deputized, you're initiated into the White Knight ranks, allowing you to fast track what is usually a 5-year process and becoming an official member of the Templar Knights. Unfortunately, there is no crisis at the moment to allow for deputization. You speak with Certification again, who mentions a criminal on the loose. Ceramic Vase now knows about Solus Delagar, an evil wizard who's avoided justice for long and has returned to Asgarnia. He was once captive to the White Knights, but was then exiled due to the White Knight Code of Conduct to not harm anyone if unprovoked. Reading between the lines, you learn what you need to do and now become a deputized White Knight. Now your mission is to track down Solus. You hand Certification a molten glass, an enchanted gem, and a lore rune, and he makes you a communication orb. You can speak with Savant through the comm orb, and she finds records showing the last 2 people Solus has been seen with: Lord Dequarius, the leader of the Black Knights, and a mage of Zamorak who was responsible for destroying the Wizard's Tower. The mage of Zamorak's money and research was stolen by Solus, and he's happy to share what he knows in exchange for 20 rune essence. All he knows is that he went east. At the end of Tavley Dungeon, Lord Dequarius refuses to help you until he sees you threaten the lives of his Black Knight brothers. All he knows is that he was most recently in an area with third creatures. You put 2 and 2 together and deduce that he has most recently been in Canifis, the werewolf town east of Varrock. When getting near, the comm orb picks up a magical teleportation aura, signalling that Solus is slowly moving between different planes. Using the scan option on the comm orb, he appears but quickly gets away. An item is left behind, signalling the next location of where he may be. Following the location of the sources of the items, you repeatedly encounter Solus, giving him less locations to teleport through and lowering his magical abilities to teleport away. You finally corner him in the Rune Essence mine. Savant launches a small army on him, but he deals with them quickly. Luckily, he is weakened by the effort of his attack, and you take the opportunity to swiftly deal with him. You bring Solus's hat to Ceramic Vase, and you're made into a White Knight and a Templar. Completing this quest is a requirement for Devious Minds and the Slug Menace. Sea Slug. Caroline's husband Kent and son Kenneth haven't returned from the fishing platform in a long time. She asks you to look for them. Holgart's boat needs a little bit of repair, so you hand him some swamp paste and then he takes you there. On the platform, you bump into Bailey. He thinks Kenneth is hiding and expresses concern for the fishermen who've been acting weird since the sea slugs infested the platform. You find Kenneth, whose father left to get help days ago. The fishermen tried to throw them off the platform, same as they were doing with all the fish they catch, but not the sea slugs. Holgart sails you to a small island where you find Kent. He tried to get help, but the small boat crashed. He explains that the sea slugs are taking control of the minds of the bodies they attach to, and he saves you from being controlled by one. Bailey has found that the sea slugs don't like heat, so he hands you a torch. Using some broken glass to direct sunlight onto some damp sticks, you dry them, which allow you to rub them together, creating the friction necessary to light the torch and giving the possibility to navigate past the slugs and up the ladder. Kicking the badly repaired wall and scaring away the sea slugs, Kenneth crawls through the opening, and he is lowered by the crane into Holgart's boat. You make your way back to shore and are rewarded by Caroline for completing the rescue. Completing this quest is a requirement for the Slug Menace. To start this quest, you must have completed Sea Slug and Wanted. Certification tells you that strange things have been happening in Witch Haven. He directs you to Colonel O'Neill, or Colonial, who says that the mayor has been acting strange, wanting to restore the ancient ruined shrine just west of town. Colonial directs you to speak with the important people of Witch Haven. Less people have been attending Brother Maledict's church. Holgart's job was given to a man named Jeb, and Mayor Hobb appears quite suspicious, knowing your name without you having said it. Inside the dungeon, you find a hidden passage leading to a stone door with markings on it. You pick up a dead sea slug, and then take a transcript of the markings to Jorald, a history buff who translates the text pertaining to a battle between Saradomin and Mahayish Medrun, aka Mother Malum. Turns out that the Templar Knights had once fought a crusade against her and Sea Slug's possession, but at best could only trap her inside a mystical prison. It appears that the reinfestation of sea slugs is controlling the minds of the townspeople to work on freeing Mother Malum. Now the priest seems infected, and 3 pages of the Book of Saradomin regarding the shrine are lost. One page is in the mayor's desk, another is held by Ezekiel Lovecraft, and the third one by a now infected Colonial, who hands you the page in fragments. You try to use the swamp paste on the page fragments, but Savant stops you so you don't damage the page. Travelling with Jeb to the fishing platform, you meet Bailey again, and he makes you sea slug glue from the dead sea slug. Using the glue, you put the page fragments together and read it. These give instructions on how to chisel and infuse rune essence. You go to the runecrafting altars of fire, water, air, earth, and mind using the specifically created essence. These are placed into the stone door, opening it. Unbeknownst to you, you've assisted in freeing Mother Malum, falling right into her trap. You defeat a slug prince and are then threatened to become the next corpse host for the Mother Malum, but you're safely teleported away by Savant in the nick of time. You update certification on the events that transpired, and he suggests keeping an eye on the rulers of Gielinor in case of suspected possession. You're rewarded with a promotion to proselyte and a leading role into any future investigations. Jungle Potion. To start this quest, you must have completed Druidic Ritual. Trufitus's people have left the village, and he needs to make a potion to commune with the gods and see what fate befalls them. First you gather some snakeweed near the ocean, then Ardrigal on the peninsula with palm trees, cytofoil in a patch of scorched earth, volcanic moss in a group of rocks, and then finally Rogue's Purse in the Joga dungeon. These are cleaned, handed to Trufitus, and you're rewarded with some Herblore XP. Completing this quest is a requirement for My Arm's Big Adventure, Zoga Flesh Eaters, Tai Bwo Wanai Trio, and Shilo Village. To start this quest you must have completed Jungle Potion. Outside the Shilo Village, Mosul Ray says that Rushilia, the Queen of the Dead, has returned, and has brought a plague turning people into zombies. He hands you a wampum belt to give to Trufitus. Trufitus mentions a temple called Azarun that Rushilia destroyed because Zadamus didn't return her affections. East of the river, you reach a mound of earth surrounded by rocks. You dig it clear and drop a torch down to observe what's inside. You then add a rope and enter. Inside the cave you crawl through a pile of rubble and search some loose rocks, finding a tattered scroll written about Bavirius, who was King Danthalas and Rushilia's son, who died in battle. She made a pact with Zamorak to return him to life, but he returned as an undead creature and terrorized them, so he was burned and his remains were entombed. In an old sack, you find a crumpled scroll detailing Rushilia's rage. At night she would enter houses and quietly strangle the life from its occupants. Only those with a particular necklace were protected. Then at some gallows you remove a corpse from a noose and sense that it must be put to rest. Trufitus examines these items and says the corpse should be buried in the sacred ground centre of the village. The spirit of Zadamus appears, thanking you for releasing him from his torture, and leaving a bone shard. Trufitus believes it could be used as a key. You cross the bridge to reach Cairn Island, search the well-stacked rocks, and enter the tomb of Bavirius. You search the dolmen, finding a sword pommel, a locating crystal, and Bavirius's notes, stating that Rushilia's tomb is north of Azarun. Bone beads are made by chiselling the sword pommel, and with a bronze wire you make the beads of the dead necklace. North of Azarun you find a door, opened by making a bone key from the bone shard. Deep in the cave, you use 3 sets of bones on a door, then being able to open it. Touching the dolmen here shakes the ground and summons Nazastarul, in zombie form, defeated and returned in skeletal form, defeated and returned in ghost form, and now actually defeated. You get the corpse of Rushilia. You make your way back to the tomb of Bavirius on Cairn Island and rest Rushilia's corpse on the dolmen there, releasing her spirit. Completing this quest is a requirement for Recipe for Disaster, Legends Quest, Lunar Diplomacy, and one small favour. Tai Bwo Wanai. To start this quest you must have completed Jungle Potion. The Tai Bwo Wanai chief Timfraku's 3 sons have left the village. Trufitus says, after having communed with the gods, that there was no curse and that the sons are free to return. Timfraku asks you to find them. Tamayu won't return until he's killed the Shaikahan. Labufu is the only person who knows how to catch Kawambwans. Initially reluctant to teach you, you eventually convince him and he gives you a Kawambwan vessel after you promise not to give it to anyone else. Using Kambwanji caught from the Holy Lake as bait, you catch one and cook it, but it's poisonous. Using a Peswan mortar, you make the Kawambwan paste and use it on the spear. Giving an agility potion and a poison spear to Tamayu, you witness him finally defeating the Shaikahan and he returns to the village. Tiodechi won't return until he's caught a Kawambwan. You give him the vessel and he manages to catch one, but before returning he wants his brother Tinsei to sketch a study of it so that they can craft more. Labufu hands you another vessel, Tinsei sketches it, and once Tiodechi is handed the sketch he returns to the village. Tinsei, on Cairn Island, won't return until he's eaten an elaborate feast of strange food items. Firstly a bottle of Karamjan rum with sliced banana in it, then a monkey sandwich made by combining the skin of a monkey, retrievable by handing Tamayu a monkey corpse, and seaweed. And lastly, marinated joga bones, made by burning the bones, adding kambwaji paste, and cooking it again. In all honesty, he seems reluctant to return. Tim Franku is happy with the return of his sons to the village, and they each give you a reward. Tiadechi teaches you how to cook bonbons without making them poisonous. Tinsei trains you in cooking techniques, and Tamayu gives you combat training and a poison spear. Plague City. Edmund's daughter Eleanor went to West Ardoin to help plague victims, but hasn't returned in a long time, and he'd like you to find her. His wife Alrina makes you a gas mask with dwell berries, and you grab a picture of Eleanor. Softening the ground in his garden with 4 buckets of water, you dig to the sewer system, and using a rope on the pipe, you make a passage into West Ardoin. Jeffik explains that the king of West Ardoin is too busy exploring westwards and doesn't care for the people of his city. Showing him Eleanor's picture, he recognizes her and directs you to the Renaissance family. You return a book Jeffik borrowed from them whilst you're at it. They mention that she was kidnapped and dragged into a building. You can't get in there without permission. You go to Bravik, who's currently in charge of West Ardoin, but he has a hangover and can't speak until he's cured his headache. He hands you a hangover cure recipe, which is chocolate milk mixed with snake grass. Once better, he writes you a warrant, and the mourners are confused about this. Whilst distracted, you enter, finding a key in a barrel and freeing Eleanor downstairs. No longer in prison, she mentions sampling the plague to find a cure for it, and then returns to East Ardoin. Edmund rewards you with an Ardoin teleportation scroll for saving his daughter. Completing this quest is a requirement for Biohazard. To start this quest, you must have completed Plague City. Eleanor's distillator for her plague sample was taken by the mourners, and the tunnel into West Ardoin was filled in. Jericho uses his birds as messengers and has communicated to have ropes put on the wall for you to get in. Omart suggests finding a way to distract the mourner guards in the tower. You throw bird feed onto the tower and release Jericho's pigeons, distracting them, and you climb into West Ardoin. You pick up a rotten apple, squeeze through the railing outside the Mourner HQ, and sabotage their cauldron of food. Inside a house you find a medical gown and are welcomed into the HQ. Upstairs, you kill the guard, grab the key, open the gate and find the distillator. Eleanor tests the sample, but the paper doesn't change colour. She'd like you to send a sample and some vials with liquids to Gidor, her mentor in Varrock. You're unable to teleport without breaking these. Also, she wants you to get some more touch papers from the chemist in Rimington. The chemist suggests giving a vial to each of his errand boys outside so you can all get past the guard in Varrock. You give Da Vinci the Ephenia, Chansey the liquid honey, and Hops the sulfuric bromine. The guard doesn't stop you, and you retrieve each of the vials from the errand boys in the Dancing Donkey Inn. Next you equip the priest gowns and are able to speak with Gidor, as his wife Julie won't let anyone but a priest see him at the moment. He reaches the same results as Eleanor, no difference in the colour of the touch paper, meaning that the plague is a lie. Eleanor says that King Lathas of East Ardoin must be confronted, as he's the one who built the wall around West Ardoin. He says he did it for the good of his people, protecting them from a greater danger. His brother Tyrus, on his expeditions west, was captured by the forces of the Dark Lord and corrupted by drinking from the Chalice of Eternity. The king thought that no one would believe him, so he invented the plague. Until they can be sure that they're safe from the Dark Lord and King Tyrus, they can't open West Ardoin. Completing this quest is a requirement for Recipe for Disaster and Underground Pass. To start this quest, you must have completed Biohazard. King Lathas' brother Tyrus is gaining strength with the Dark Lord in the west. The only way there is through the Underground Pass, which is home to the cult of Iban, who's a claimed son of Zamorak. Koftik meets you and is to help you through the cave. He says that people seem to lose themselves to a dark force here. At a camp you find the diary of Randus, a fabled hero who was enticed by the whispers and moans he heard in the cave, promising glory. You rub an oily cloth on an arrow and light it afire, shooting the rope holding a cross bridge. Further down, you rope swing across a pit and come across a falling grid puzzle. Then you open a gate and find a passage with traps which you disarm. An old journal next to the well details how Randus had mages create orbs with light of Saradomin to stave off the darkness, but the voices still enticed Randus. Using a plank, you safely avoid the floor traps, grabbing 4 orbs and destroying them in the furnace. Throughout the cave you hear whispers coming from the darkness also. Down the well you see slaves screaming that they can feel creatures eating them from the inside out. Avoiding obstacles, you eventually come upon a unicorn in a cage. Grabbing a broken railing, you shift a boulder, smashing the unicorn dead, and grab its horn. Even further into the cave, you meet some of the soldiers King Lathas had sent to find safe passage through the cave. They're hospitable to you, but you kill all 3 of them, grabbing their coat of arms. These are dropped alongside a unicorn horn into another well, opening the doors. Koftik now appears to have joined the cult and wants to stay in the caves. He asks you to kill the dwarves downstairs, who have so far resisted Iban. Nyluth says that the only way through the underground pass is the Well of Voyage, which Iban has corrupted, using it to dispose of those who displease him. Back upstairs, jumping across platforms, you find a witch's house. The witch Cardia appears to be looking for her cat. You find it and release it into her house, and while she's distracted, you open her chest, grabbing a book titled The Tale of Iban and a doll also. You find out that Cardia is responsible for creating him. He was originally a knight, fighting under Aquarius, the Lord of the Black Knights. Iban was far more ambitious than most, to a point of corruption. One day he died to the White Knights. Cardia resurrected him to be a master of the undead. First she buried him in a tomb, smeared his blood on a doll, and also the blood of Kalrag the spider, and performed a ritual of Incantia, spawning the 3 demons that keep his shadow. Finally, she grabbed an innocent white dove, strangling it, giving Iban his conscience, and innocence corrupted by evil. Only the same process that was used to resurrect the soul of Iban could be used to destroy that very same evil. You defeat the 3 demons, grabbing their amulets, using them to open a chest with Iban's shadow, which you pour on the doll. Back near the dwarves, you fill a bucket with some dwarf brew, which is poured on the tomb and lit ablaze, helping you retrieve the ashes of Iban, which you smear on the doll. Kalrag is defeated, and its blood is smeared on the doll also. Lastly, you find a cage of the soulless with the dove, and smear that on the doll too. Grabbing Zamorak robes, you enter the temple and throw his doll into the well, and he is destroyed. The temple begins to collapse and you appear in a cave, finding Iban's staff. Koftik is here, having lost his memory of what happened. You only vaguely remember having a hazy idea of a unicorn, a boulder and some paladins. At least there are no more voices or whispers in the cave. You return to King Lathas, who rewards you for defeating Iban. Completing this quest is a requirement for Regicide, Recipe for Disaster, and Legends Quest. To start this quest, you must have completed Family Crest, Heroes Quest, Shilo Village, Underground Pass, and Waterfall Quest. The guards of the Legends Guild tell you that to become a member, you must complete a quest. They see that you're eligible and direct you to Vizier Urkel. His quest for you is to map the Karazi jungle, befriend a Karazi tribesman, and bring back a token of their friendship. Entering the jungle, you map it from the eastern, central, and western side. You let a jungle forester make a copy of it, and they hand you a ball roarer, which you can use to attract the Karazi tribes members' attention. Swinging it, you meet Gujuo, who tells you that his tribe's totem pole has been polluted by an evil spirit, and their shaman Ungadulu went to confront the spirit but has not returned. You offer to help, and he points you towards the VLD caves, where the shaman communes with the spirits. Ungadulu is surrounded by a wall of fire in the form of an octagram. Possessed by an evil spirit, it channels through him and asks you to douse the fires with pure water. Gujuo explains how to obtain the water, handing you a sketch. With it, you make a bowl of gold, which he then blesses, and you cut a hollow reed by using the machete on the tall reeds by the edge of the sacred pool. With this, you fill the bowl. Back in the cave, behind a bookcase, you find a crevice passage and come across an ancient gate which you picklock. Then you mine 3 boulders and push some heavy doors, passing death wings and climbing over a jagged wall. Further inside you find the markings on a wall giving a riddle. Using a soul, mind, earth and 2 lore runes, a door appears. In the next room you fit 7 different gems on carved rocks sitting in pools of water, creating a light show, and a binding book appears. Back at the wall of fire, you use the blessed water to enter and then hold the book of binding in front of Ungadulu. The pages shine and Nizik Shened spawns. After defeating the demon, Ungadulu gives you Yomi tree seeds needed to make a new totem pole, firstly by soaking them in some sacred water. When you go to collect more water, the pool dries up, replaced by a deadly smelling sludge. Gujuo tells you that deeper into the VLD caves is the source of the water, but it's guarded by angry spirits of the undead. To progress deeper, you need to be brave. Gujuo teaches you how to make a bravery potion by using snakeweed and Ardrigul. In the room with 7 pools, you cast a charge orb spell on the ancient gate and are sucked into another part of the cave. Here you use a rope on the winch, drink the bravery potion, and venture deeper into the darkness below. The spirit of Vialdi warns you with a riddle of the dangers that progress in this cave. Climbing over the rocks, you make it down the path. Now you fight 3 undead warriors named Ranulf de Veer, Ervig Sene, and San Tojalon, who drop the parts of a crystal. These are combined in a furnace to make a heart crystal, and you hear a voice inside your head, remembering Vialdi's riddle, to bring life to the dragon's eye. Using the heart crystal on a mossy rock, it starts to glow, now fitting in a heart-shaped grove, unlocking the barrier to the deepest part of the cave. You see a boulder covering the source of the spring, and when you try to move it, a spirit named Ekned Zekin appears, his name an anagram of Nizikshuned. He is tormented not to rest whilst Vialdi remains a spirit. He hands you a dark dagger made of pure obsidian to kill Vialdi. When showing this dagger to Ungadulu, he gives you a Holy Force spell card, which will reveal Ekned Zekin's true form. Once defeated again, you open the source of the spring, restoring the sacred pool with water. Gujuo senses a new lightness in the forest, the air tasting more fresh. Finding a patch of fertile soil, you plant a seed and it quickly grows. You add more water, chop it down, and carve a new totem pole. When attempting to replace the old corrupted pole, the demon Nekishened appears one final time. Finally defeated, you place the new pole. Gujuo offers you a gilded totem, which you bring to Radimus Urkel along with the notes of the completed map. He has the totem placed in the guild, and you're welcomed as a member of the Legends Guild, rewarded with 120,000 experience. Completing this quest is a requirement for Dragon Slayer 2 and Recipe for Disaster. Thank you very much for watching Season 3 of the Questlore series. Join me next time in Season 4, where I'll explain the lore behind the Fremennik Trials.